state of Wisconsin has announced, Scott Walker, the Republican governor, that he's going to cut pay, called freezing. That means cut pay for people in the public sector. That means teachers, police, librarians. Cut pay for them. Restrict collective bargaining, which means they can't get rights. And if there's any trouble, call out the National Guard. Okay, that's instituting a dictatorship of the very wealthy. That's on the inside pages, right here. Not in Egypt. Well, actually, there is protest in Wisconsin. So tens of thousands of people are protesting. It's not spreading across the country, although it's happening everywhere. Well, these are policies designed to. Meanwhile, right in the middle of all of this, literally, while all this is going on, the CEO of Goldman Sachs, one of the major robbers and criminals, he just got himself another $12.5 million bonus, plus more than tripling of his base salary. That's why we're blaming the teachers for bringing about the economic crisis. And this goes along with a lot of other things, like the attack on the public schools. If you want to privatize some system, there's a standard way of doing it. You want to privatize some system, defund it. If you defund it, it'll stop working properly, naturally. And then people will be annoyed with it and say, okay, we've got to privatize it. Okay, then you hand it over to private power. That's what's happening with the public school system. You defund it, don't pay teachers decent salaries, have too many people in the classroom, don't do the obvious things that will improve the system. It'll start being dysfunctional. Then you build up propaganda about how we have to have charter schools, which is essentially privatization, except paid for by the public. It's privatization paid for by the public. You take a look at their records, they barely compare with public schools with a comparable character. But you have a lot of propaganda about how you have to do it, and presumably destroy the public school system. That's just the way the system of higher public education is being systematically destroyed. I mean, that was one of the jewels of U.S. society. We had the first and by far the best higher public education system in the world, being systematically dismantled. They claim it's economic reasons, but that can't be true. They go across the border to Mexico. It's a poor country. They have a public education system. I was just down there giving talks at the National University a couple of months ago. A very good university, high quality, pretty good facilities, and salaries aren't like the United States, but it's a lively place with a good, very good record, good things happening. It's free. I mean, in Mexico, you can have a free university for hundreds of thousands of students. In the United States, you have to pay $50,000 of tuition to, pay to get through. It's not for economic reasons. It's for disciplinary reasons. Well, that's going on before our eyes. And it's happening across the board and a lot of other things, too. So you read the paper, they're supposed to be upset about the deficit, okay? It's a good question, but you should be upset about the deficit, but let's say we are. Where's the deficit come from? Half the deficit approximately comes from military spending, which is about the same as the rest of the world combined. And it's not for our protection. It arguably harms us. So that's half. The new budget is going up. The other half comes from the health system. We have a highly dysfunctional health system. It costs about twice as much per capita as comparable countries. And it doesn't lead to good outcomes. Outcomes are among the poorer ones in the industrial countries. Drug prices are about twice as high as anywhere else. Well, all of that costs. Is that being, is the deficit, are the budgets, say the Republican budgets or the Obama budget, they're not touching that. If we had the same kind of health system that comparable countries have, we'd have a surplus, not a deficit. But you can't touch that. And it's interesting the way the corporate media are describing it. Read, say, the New York Times, the Washington Post, and so on. They criticize Obama's budget because he didn't go after entitlements. They say you've got to go after entitlements. That's the real problem. Not the military budget, not dysfunctional health system. Entitlements. Well, what are entitlements? Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. On Social Security, it is 100% lying. Social Security doesn't add 1 penny to the deficit. Literally, Social Security is paid out of payroll taxes. A working person pays taxes all his life, and when you get to retirement, you're supposed to get some of it back. That's Social Security. Nothing to the deficit. But you have to list that because it's a major effort, including Obama, to destroy Social Security. What about Medicare and Medicaid? Yeah, they're causing a problem, but they're not causing it because they're inefficient and expensive. In fact, Medicare, for example, is far more efficient than private insurance, a fraction of the administrative costs. They're expensive because they have to work through the privatized healthcare system. But you can't touch the insurers, and you can't touch the financial institutions. So therefore, you go after Medicare and Medicaid, cut that back, so poor people don't get medical help or elderly people. And it's kind of like blaming the economic crisis on teachers. But if you have effective propaganda, you can get away with it. And it's kind of 100%. I wouldn't say it's 100%. So maybe read the media, you can find a couple of columnists talking about it. But it's just overwhelming, and it's having its effect on public attitudes. You can see it by looking at the polls, and it's very dangerous. This is going on here. What it amounts to is undercutting and reducing the limited democracy that we have. At the same time, under much harsher conditions, comparably harsher, people throughout the Arab world are fighting for democracy. It's a pretty dramatic contrast.
Wow. Since most kids spend nearly 6 hours in school every day, since most kids spend about 6 hours every day, or 5 days out of the week, for 180 days of the year, how much influence does the nature of school have on children?
Well, you can answer that. We went through school. So how much influence does it have? I mean, it has an influence, of course. It can have a positive influence, it can have a harmful influence. I mean, I can tell you my experiences, but you have your own experiences. You don't have to wait for me. One effect, which actually you can see in recent years, is the school curriculum itself is being designed to discipline, not to encourage learning. So if you have to study, I'm sure you've been through this, all of us have. If you have to study to pass an exam and you're motivated, you'll study hard, pass the exam. 2 weeks later, you forgot everything you studied. I mean, if it's being forced on you from the outside, it doesn't stick. On the other hand, if you get interested in some subject and pursue it on your own, you may not fit whatever the exam is about, but you'll remember. And in a good school, that's what's done. Whether it's kindergarten or graduate school at MIT. Like in graduate school here, where you're really trying to train people, you want people to be productive, creative thinkers and scientists and so on. You don't do it with tests. We don't give tests. Maybe give them to just monitor progress now and then, but you don't study for the test. What you do, in fact, the students are expected to challenge. They're expected to get up and say, that's wrong, I want to do this. You're supposed to go your own direction. And that's the way it ought to be in kindergarten, and can be. But studying for tests is the most, maybe it's training for the Marine Corps, but it's certainly not training to be an educated person in any serious sense.
So would you say the education system now kind of is going more towards a merit system for students? Merits being grades?
It's not a merit system. I mean, first of all, the person who can pass get the best marks in the test is not, there's no reason to believe that person's going to be the most, say, creative scientist or artist or anything else. I mean, people who are creative and independent-minded and so on often will disregard it. They don't want to be disciplined. And besides, why should we have a merit system? In fact, it should be the opposite. Most resources should go to people who need help. I mean, like when I was a kid, I tell you my own